Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up, we've got stories that are developing all around the world. We will start, as ever, with the headlines. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson under pressure as he brings in fresh restrictions over the Omicron COVID-19 variant at the same time as his staff are accused of holding parties in the street last year that may have broken rules. India's defence chief and 12 others who died in a helicopter crash lay draped in the Indian flag at a defence cantonment before being flown to New Delhi, where the general will be laid to rest with full military honours. China warns Western nations they will pay the price for a diplomatic boycott of the upcoming Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. Chinese real estate giant Evergrande is declared in default by Fitch ratings agency due to the debt-laden property developer's failure to pay more than $1.2 billion in bond repayments. Jailed Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai is among 3 democracy activists convicted over banned demonstrations to do with the Tiananmen Square massacre. And Australia dominate the opening Ashes test for the second day in a row in Brisbane. David Warner, Marcus Labuschagne and Travis Head all star with the bat as the hosts open up a big first innings lead against England. Being introduced in England to combat the COVID-19 Omicron variant. They will include tougher measures around wearing masks in some public spaces, the reintroduction at various venues of COVID passes, which will see people required to use proof of vaccination or proof of a negative COVID test. There is also work from home guidance being introduced.
But from Monday, you should work from home if you can. Go to work if you must, but work from home if you can. Second, from this Friday, we will further extend the legal requirement to wear a face mask to most public indoor venues, including theatres and cinemas. Third, we'll also make the NHS COVID pass mandatory into nightclubs and venues where large crowds gather, including unseated indoor venues with more than 500 people, unseated outdoor venues with more than 4,000 people, and any venue with more than 10,000 people.
Omicron cases in the UK are thought to be doubling, according to scientists, every 2 to 3 days. And those scientists warn that if that trend continues, even with a largely vaccinated population, it could lead to a huge wave in hospitalisations in the coming weeks. These new measures are designed to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. The UK's had more than 10 million confirmed COVID cases in total through the pandemic, with over 140,000 deaths. Around 21 million people have already received booster jabs in the UK. Boris Johnson is trying to make it clear, though, that in his view, the new measures do not represent a new COVID lockdown.
I want to be absolutely clear with you. I don't believe we can keep going indefinitely with non-pharmaceutical interventions, I mean restrictions on people's way of life, where just because a substantial proportion of the population still, sadly, has not got vaccinated. And I think we're going to need to have a national conversation about the way forward and the other things that we can do to protect those who are hard to reach, who haven't got vaccinated for one reason or another, who may have medical reasons why they can't get vaccinated, other ways of protecting them.
Those comments were seized upon by some Conservative MPs who believed that Boris Johnson was hinting at the introduction of mandatory vaccinations. But today, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid has rejected the idea of mandatory jabs. All of this is controversial, given that Boris Johnson is introducing tougher Plan B measures to slow the spread of Omicron at a time when figures in his own government are accused of breaking COVID rules this time last year. The controversy deepened after initial reports in the newspapers about various potential parties in Downing Street when a video emerged. It was filmed on December the 22nd last year. Number 10 officials can be seen joking about questions about a party.
Questions today.
Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not.
Is cheese and wine all right? No. It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
That's Allegra Stratton at the podium. She was at the time Boris Johnson's press secretary, and she was rehearsing for a new style of press briefing that never actually launched. She then became Boris Johnson's spokesperson on climate and the COP26 summit. But because of that video, she's resigned and apologised. Boris Johnson has also apologised for that video, not for the party, which he says he's been assured never took place at all. But many are furious at the perception that Number 10 officials were not following rules, that they were telling the rest of the country to do so. Now, Chris Jones is joining me live from London for more on this controversy. Chris, a lot of the attention has been focused on that December the 18th party or event, whatever it may have been. But that's not the only alleged episode in which rule breaking is claimed to have been taking place by staff close to Boris Johnson working in his government.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. There's also reports of events happening on the 27th of November and the 10th of December too. They're just two other dates that we're hearing of potential kind of Christmas parties held by the Conservative government last year, and that all comes at a time where social gatherings were really banned, meaning that lots of, every kind of citizen across Britain couldn't meet their families and loved ones, and that's made people extremely angry and made them kind of mistrust this government. Now, we heard that kind of audio from Allegra Stratton at that mock press briefing. She's now resigned, but the opposition Labour Party wants it to go further. They're calling for a police investigation. The police have said that they won't investigate just yet because of a lack of evidence, but nevertheless, there is an inquiry ongoing into exactly what happened, how many events were held, and what happened at those events. So all of this is really putting pressure onto the Conservative government and also Boris Johnson. Well, it comes, of course, at a time when Boris Johnson's imposing restrictions on people to try and slow the spread of Omicron, and critics say that is going to mean that public compliance may not be as high this time around if people feel that Downing Street officials weren't following rules that they were imposing on the rest of the country. What is the government saying about those claims? Yeah, no, absolutely. Those the Plan B measures are coming into effect on Monday the 13th. That means more wearing of masks and also not being able to do certain things without COVID passes. But also the government is, it's really being questioned on the decisions that are being made in terms of these Plan B measures because of this whole Christmas party debacle, but the government is urging people to separate the two issues. Professor Chris Whitty, the chief medical advisor, has told people to separate the Christmas party issue and the introduction of the new measures. And also Health Secretary Sajid Javid, he says, my job is to do the right thing, led by evidence, and the evidence is from the scientific experts that this Omicron variant is spreading throughout the community and without measures could increase to rates that is kind of unmanageable and place pressure on the National Health Service. But no matter what decision the government makes, they're bound to come under scrutiny with this whole Christmas party issue ongoing.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, it was interesting. Chris Whitty, the chief medical officer for England, saying that he thought people would be able to separate out the two issues. He acknowledged that some people might feel anger over what they thought was unfair things happening, a clear reference to the claims of a Christmas party. But he said he believed that if the British public were presented with the facts around Omicron, that they would be able to make decisions on complying with those measures if they were presented to them in a logical way. We've also heard from Boris Johnson and Sajid Javid, the UK Prime Minister and Health Secretary, saying that they believe all the evidence through the pandemic so far points to British people following these new rules despite all of those claims around Christmas parties.
What I can tell you is that all the guidelines were observed, continue to be observed, and what I can also tell you is that we're going on with the job, as we have been throughout, of dealing with the priorities of the people, particularly fighting crime.
So was it a party where the guidelines were followed, or was it not a party?
I can tell you that the guidelines were followed at all times.
Well, did you investigate that yourself? Have you satisfied yourself that
I have satisfied myself that the guidelines were followed at all times. And what I can also tell you is that we're focusing on the issues that matter to me above all, and that is fighting crime, and I believe those are the things that matter also to the British public.
Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai has been convicted of inciting and taking part in an unlawful vigil. A district court in Hong Kong found 3 prominent pro-democracy activists guilty of taking part in a demonstration marking the Tiananmen Square massacre. Jimmy Lai, along with activists Gwyneth Ho and Chow Hang-tung, have been convicted of an unauthorised assembly held on the 4th of June last year. They were among thousands who defied a ban to commemorate the 1989 crackdown at Beijing's Tiananmen Square. More than 24 politicians and activists have been charged over it. The verdict for the trio comes after they had contested their charges. They will be sentenced on December the 13th and face a maximum of 5 years in prison for the charges. 16 other activists are already serving sentences of 4 to 10 months for the same incident. Our correspondent Richard Kimber has sent us more from Hong Kong.
Yes, as you mentioned, this has been a widespread crackdown by police on this vigil that used to be an annual tradition in Hong Kong to commemorate the victims of the 1989 crackdown on protests in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. That's been going for years here, but just for the last couple of years, police have banned all forms of commemorative gatherings at that time of year, citing COVID-19 as the reason. Activists have always said that they think the police are using that as an excuse, and they've tried to hold vigils anyway, just as they did last year. Now, 3 of the main organisers of that vigil, Chow Hang-tung of the Alliance that used to organise that vigil every year, Jimmy Lai, as you mentioned, the well-known democracy activist and media mogul, and a former journalist, Gwyneth Ho. They all tried to contest charges that they were trying to incite the public to join the commemoration, despite the fact that they knew, and everybody knew, that it had not been given police authority. The judge said that there was ample evidence to suggest that they were trying to get people to come along, including the fact that she said they turned up in person and were rallying people as people walked past the main park in Hong Kong where people tend to gather, and she pointed to social media posts that Chow Hang-tung, one of the organisers, had made that she said was evidence that she'd been inciting people to gather. So she threw out their defence, and all 3, as you say, due to be sentenced in the next 10 days as we wait to find out exactly how much more of a jail sentence people like Jimmy Lai will now face. He's already, of course, in the middle of a 20-month sentence over other protest charges. Well, certainly at this trial there was hopes that this might be an opportunity for some kind of legal recourse, because Chow Hang-tung herself, the founder and the leader of the alliance that's organised this vigil, is actually a qualified barrister and has been serving in the city for many years, and she represented herself at this trial with some degree of confidence that she might be able to argue her way out of trouble. But it doesn't seem to be the case anymore that that's really an option for people in her position. Her defence, as we said there, completely squashed by the judge in this case, and that's rather undermining any hope that in future cases like this there might be an opportunity for some kind of leniency. Jimmy Lai already serving, as I say, 20 months over other protest charges, but more importantly, he's yet to come to trial over 4 national security law charges. These are much bigger charges that carry individually up to life in prison as their maximum sentence. So these are the bigger charges that we're awaiting to find out how he'll be prosecuted against next year. And with people like him and other leaders of democracy activist groups already in jail or having left Hong Kong in the last couple of years fearing prosecution, there really isn't much left in the way of political opposition. And this all comes just 1 week ahead of Hong Kong's legislative election on the 19th of December, which will be a landmark election really in Hong Kong, if not because of the result, but because there's almost no significant pro-democracy or opposition politicians even standing in that election. So it's going to be a big change for Hong Kong's political landscape.
Well, moving on to Winter Olympics and diplomatic boycotts. Canada has announced a diplomatic boycott of the Games due to be held in Beijing next year. It's joining allies including Australia, Britain, the US and New Zealand, which have taken similar moves. China's hit back with a warning. The Foreign Ministry accuses America, Australia, Britain and Canada of politicising the Games. China says they will pay a price for their wrongdoings. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, is citing human rights concerns for his decision.
For the past many months, we've been in conversation with partners and allies around the world on the issue of the Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Games. As a country, indeed, as many partners around the world, we are extremely concerned by the repeated human rights violations by the Chinese government. That is why we are announcing today that we will not be sending any diplomatic representation to the Beijing Olympic or Paralympic Games this winter.
Well, that follows a similar announcement by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
There will be effectively a diplomatic boycott of the. There will be a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. No ministers are expected to attend. What I think the House and no officials, Mr. Speaker, but what I can tell the House is that I do not think that sporting boycotts are sensible, and that remains the policy of the government.
Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said he is considering what to do.
オリンピック・パラリンピック、外交的にボイコットするということを発表したことを承知をしております。その中で我が国の対応ですが、オリンピックの意義ですとか、さらには我が国の外交にとっての意義等を総合的に勘案し、国益の観点から自ら判断していきたいと思っています。これが我が国の基本的な姿勢であります。
Well, the growing list of countries boycotting the upcoming Winter Olympics comes after the Summer Games was held without spectators after a year-long delay. That growing list of countries deciding not to send diplomatic delegations, as well as the sexual harassment allegations by Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai, means the International Olympic Committee is under pressure to take a stand over China. The president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, says it's not right to take sides.
The first question is a clear no by not commenting on political issues. You are not taking a side, neither one nor the other. And this is, the mission of the IOC. Otherwise, we could not manage to accomplish the mission there of the games to bring and to unite the world if we would start to take political sides on one way or the other. We would never get all the 506 national Olympic committees to Olympic Games. This would be the politicization of the Olympic Games, and this, if I would think it further, could be the end of the Olympic Games, as it was the end of the ancient Olympic Games when politics got involved after 1,000 years of Olympic Games.
Weapons belonging to French military and political leader Napoleon Bonaparte have been auctioned in America. A sword and 5 pistols used by the French revolutionary in 1799's coup d'etat. The British royals are in festive spirit. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have started their yearly ritual of attending community Christmas carols at Westminster Abbey. This year, the Abbey's celebrating the unsung heroes of the coronavirus pandemic. Prince William and Kate listened to children singing carols and greeted people at the service. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay with WION World is One.
This is right, Arab.